Okay, let's jump right into this explainer and completely reframe everything you thought you knew about global product expansion. If you're building digital products, you've probably been told that taking your software international is just a matter of swapping out the language file. Well, today, we're diving into some fascinating research from global market strategist Vinay Vijay Raut, and I promise you, by the end of this, you're going to see exactly why treating global expansion as a simple language exercise is literally costing companies millions of dollars. Picture this scenario. A well-funded SaaS startup decides it's time to conquer Japan. They do everything right according to the standard playbook. They translate their entire application into flawless Japanese, they hire a high-powered Tokyo-based sales team, and they launch with a massive, confident press release. And then, 18 months later, they quietly pull the plug. They retreat. Why? Because while the translation was perfectly accurate, the user experience remained culturally American. It was built on linear, solo user workflows and direct feedback loops in a Japanese corporate culture that deeply values group harmony and collective success. It didn't fail because the code was bad. It failed because the product felt completely alien.
So the crucial point here is that surface-level localization, just translating the words on the screen, is actually worse than doing nothing at all. Why? Well, because when you present a beautifully translated user interface that behaves with a culturally foreign user experience, you instantly break trust. It signals to your sophisticated users that you put any effort to sell to them, but absolutely zero effort to actually understand them.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover the global expansion trap, uncover invisible market layers, dive into the ADAPT model, look at a real-world case study with a company called Nexus, and wrap up with a 90-day implementation plan.
Part 1, the global expansion trap. Let's start by looking at why the standard playbook for going global usually ends in quiet disasters.
You know the traditional approach. Execs identify a new market based purely on the total addressable market, or TAM. They translate the UI, hire a local sales rep, and then just sit back waiting for the revenue to roll in. This approach treats international expansion entirely as a distribution math problem. It wrongly assumes your original product is culturally neutral. But here is the hard truth: every single product carries the cultural fingerprint of where it was built. Your visual hierarchy, your error messaging, your payment preferences, these are cultural artifacts, not universal truths.
Which brings us to Part 2, uncovering invisible market layers.
What's really fascinating here is how every market is actually split into two distinct realities. You have the visible layer, things like language, currency, and local data regulations. Most localization teams update this layer, check the box, and declare total victory. But then you have the invisible layer. This is where values, communication norms, aesthetics, and power dynamics live. And mark my words, product market fit in a new geography lives entirely within this invisible layer. Let's look at a prime example of this invisible layer: trust. Cultures process trust incredibly differently. In Germany, trust is built through technical precision. Users want to see comprehensive documentation before they even think about signing up. Compare that to Brazil, where trust is built through warmth, personality, and human relationships. They want to feel the brand's personality first. Then look at South Korea, where trust flows heavily through institutional endorsements and certification badges. You simply cannot use a single, unified onboarding flow to serve all three of these totally distinct trust architectures.
So how do we systematically map these invisible layers without getting totally overwhelmed? We use Section 3, the ADAPT localization model.
The A in ADAPT stands for aesthetics and experience. Visual expectations vary wildly depending on where you are. Japanese users often expect and trust high information density, lots of text, lots of data right up front. Scandinavian users, on the other hand, expect stark minimalism. And if you're expanding into Arab markets, it's not just about translating text right to left, it's fundamentally rethinking the entire spatial hierarchy of your user interface.
Next up is the D, decision and trust architecture. We just touched on this, but it's absolutely critical. What triggers a buying decision in the US, like peer reviews and community consensus, can create massive friction in a market like India, where buyers might be looking specifically for government certifications or major enterprise logos. Misaligning your social proof is a guaranteed way to kill your conversion rates. The A is for affordance and workflow mapping. This is really about respecting how people actually work. Are decisions made individually or collaboratively? Is corporate hierarchy strictly respected in their daily workflows, or is bottom-up input the norm? Your product must serve as a mirror to how people naturally operate in that culture, rather than trying to force a foreign, imported workflow onto a local team.
Then we have P for payment and commerce norms. Payment friction is entirely avoidable, but ignoring it equals conversion death. You can't just offer a US credit card processor globally. You need UPI in India, Boleto in Brazil. But it's more than just the mechanics. It requires adapting your pricing psychology. What are the local norms around annual versus monthly billing, or free tiers versus time-bound trials?
Finally, the T stands for tone and communication resonance. Think about your error messages, your empty states, your marketing copy. The emotional register changes drastically by region. Does your tone need to be formal or casual, direct or hedged, playful or highly authoritative? An error message that feels quirky and fun in the US might feel deeply unprofessional and insulting to an enterprise user in Germany.
It's brilliant to see this visualized because it perfectly proves why you can't treat all markets equally. When charting the regional adaptation depth required against a US origin baseline, launching in Canada might only need a 28% adaptation depth, but Japan demands a massive 92% adaptation. A one-size-fits-all localization budget is a total myth. The distance between cultures dictates the depth of the work.
Let's make this concrete. Section 4, Nexus, a case study. We're going to look at a hypothetical Berlin-based B2B tool called Nexus. Instead of just translating their app, the Nexus team ran 6-week cultural discovery sprints in Japan, Brazil, and India, and their discoveries were eye-opening. In Japan, users absolutely rejected direct task assignment. Assigning a task directly to an individual felt accusatory. They needed a proposed task feature to maintain group harmony. In Brazil, users felt the async tool was cold. They needed WhatsApp integration to build synchronous relational trust. And in India, administrators demanded strict role-based access that mirrored their real-world organizational hierarchy. These weren't just feature requests. They were fundamental cultural incompatibilities.
So what happens when you actually fix the invisible layer? Well, by addressing these specific cultural friction points rather than just translating text, Nexus saw a staggering 3 times increase in their trial-to-paid conversion rates compared to their default localization efforts.
But it doesn't stop there. They didn't just acquire users, they kept them. They achieved an incredible 67% reduction in first-year churn after deploying this cultural adaptation. That is the true financial power of cultural empathy.
Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds super expensive and time-consuming, but you don't need a massive research budget. You just need Section 5, the 90-day implementation plan.
Here is exactly how you execute this, step by step. Weeks 1 and 2, conduct cultural discovery. Hire a local cultural consultant and run contextual user interviews to see how people actually work. Weeks 3 and 4, build a friction inventory. Score your product ruthlessly against the 5 dimensions of the ADAPT model. Weeks 5 through 8, build your minimum viable localization. Don't fix everything. Just find the 20% of cultural friction points causing 80% of the drop-off and fix those. And finally, weeks 9 through 12, iterate. Empower a local advisory panel of power users to give you ongoing, honest feedback.
The dream of a single, universal global product is incredibly seductive, but honestly, it's a trap. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. As you plan your next geographic expansion, I want to leave you with a much harder but much better question to ask yourself. What would this market have built if it had built us? If you can answer that, you aren't just distributing a product anymore. You're building something globally beloved.